Okay, so by now you've probably seen some of the news about the Mammoth Meatball. So I'm going to go into a little bit of details about how it was made, why I don't know if I'd really call it a mammoth meatball. Is it really made out of mammoth? And then some of the implications from this meatball. All right, so here's a little bit about what they did in a simplified way. So they took the genome of a mammoth from the remains of mammoths that we've gotten, and when you extract what we call ancient DNA or DNA from long extinct animals, you get this sort of fragmented version of the genes. And in particular, they chose to focus on the myoglobin gene because that's kind of one of the proteins, one of the major proteins that give meat its meaty texture and some of its flavor. So, in order to fill in some of these missing bits and pieces of the gene, they used a living relative like the Asian and African elephant to fill in some of the gap. So it's mostly mammoth, but also a lot of elephant. And then what they did is they took that myoglobin gene that's now completed and inserted it into a sheep genome. Um, and this whole process required killing none of these animals. Well, I guess the mammoth was already dead. But the data for the mammoth genome is stored in a computer, can be replicated infinitely amount of times. Same with elephants. We have their genome sequence, and same for sheep. So you can do all this on the computer and not touch an animal at this point. But at this point, when they do actually add the gene to a sheep cell, they add it to a specific sheep cell known as a myoblast. This is a stem cell for muscle, so the part of the sheep that you would eat. And so they clone that up. This is my simplified like cells in a petri dish to a point where it was enough for a meatball, a pretty large meatball too. The pictures that they show are very large. So this whole process required killing zero animals. Like, look at that guy's hand. That is a massive meatball. And as someone who has done cell culture before, it takes a long time and a lot of cells to make something that big. Now, granted, I don't do like what we call cultured meat or lab grown meat, so maybe there are specific techniques that make it easier and faster. But it takes a good amount of effort. Now, why'd they do this? What's the point? So this was done by a company called Vow. Vow Food is a biotech food company who they're trying to make sort of like designer cultured meats or designer lab grown meats made of exotic animals that you wouldn't go out and eat. It'd be pretty unethical to go out and kill them and eat them because they're on endangered species list or they're literally extinct. But because you can do this sort of thing, you can still have that meat without the animal. So a big reason why Vow and other cultured meat companies exist is because the meat industry has large impacts on greenhouse gases and the environment, especially the large sort of factory farming kind of industries. And the idea is that if we can culture this meat, it would reduce the amount of effort and energy and waste that goes into creating the meat itself. Studies have been done that show that there's like a 92% decrease in the carbon footprint of beef alone if it's cultured instead of raised and then slaughtered. There's a variety of different ways to tweak those numbers in lab settings that are more controllable than in farming. Now, and ate some brand new creature, that might give us some sort of immune response that we've never had before. So I don't know. I don't know what it would taste like. So here's the thing. My big question is it really mammoth meat? The majority of the meat is sheep. 99.9% of it is basically sheep. Really, what makes meat taste and feel like meat is the fat content, is a lot of what the taste is, and then the texture of meat. is a combination of the different muscle fibers, and myoglobin is not the major muscle fiber in meat anyways. So I don't know. It's a very convenient protein to use. So, but even then, the gene that we took from the mammoth, a lot of the a lot of the broken pieces were filled in by elephant genes. So, is it really more elephant than mammoth? I don't know. They didn't release a paper talking exactly about this process, so I don't know what the percentages are. I looked at the CEO's own blog of the company, and then also at the company itself, to see if they elaborated a little bit more about the process, but they didn't give away any specifics about the percentages of genes. But the majority of the cell itself and the genome they used is sheep. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it probably tastes like sheep. So it's a sheep meatball. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a gimmick. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's a cool gimmick. I think it's cool. So this opens up an argument of semantics and like whether or not if you take one gene from one organism and give it to another, is that like, does that make that organism, a new thing from what it was? I know I'm not explaining that correctly, but like with golden rice, it's rice, but we add a gene from carrots that makes it have higher levels of vitamin A. So is it a carrot now? No, it's still rice. It just has a carrot gene. Or for like GMO corn, we give it a gene from a bacteria. The corn is not a bacteria now. It's still corn. It's just improved by this gene. So these sheep cells are not mammoth cells. They just have a mammoth gene. So it's a sheep meatball is my argument at the end of the day. Generally speaking, I'm down to eat cultured meat. I wouldn't have any problem with it. It's been shown to be safe. Although you have to verify basically every product and from different labs, depending on the protocols they use and stuff like that. It's a very new space, lots to cover there, so I won't go down that rabbit hole. I find it interesting. I wonder if it tastes good. This meatball in particular, they don't want anyone to eat it. They say that because mammoth meat hasn't been in our diet and hasn't been exposed to our immune system in millennia, that they're afraid of some sort of immune reaction. I'm not sure why they really have that fear. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. If there was going to be an immune reaction, we very likely would probably conserve the immunity to it being passed down generations. It'd be one thing if we went to a planet. Now, my question is, and more for my audience here, if you're vegan specifically or vegetarian, where do you sit with cultured meat? Nothing has no like mammal has to die or animal has to die. Animal cells have to die. But are you a vegan because you care about cells? Because you eat plant cells. So I don't see where the line goes there. The line gets pretty blurry, is what I think. I feel a little weird about eating extinct animals, not gonna lie, but maybe that's part of the art of the whole thing, the invoking weirdness. So that's interesting. But yeah, how does a vegan feel about this? And cultured meat in general, because cultured meat's going to be very common very soon. So let me know.